How does the tech that runs our world really work? We break it down to its fundamental truths. This is First Principles.
You're scrolling through photos on your phone. Maybe it's a picture from a recent vacation, a sunset over the ocean. The orange is so deep it feels warm. The purple in the clouds is so rich you could almost swim in it. The light reflects off the water in a way that's impossibly sharp, impossibly real. You zoom in, and the detail holds. You can see the silhouette of a bird in the distance, the texture of the sand, the faint glimmer of a faraway city. It doesn't feel like you're looking at a device. It feels like you're looking through a window. A perfect palm-sized window onto another time and place. This little rectangle of glass and metal in your hand is painting with light. It's conjuring millions of colors, shades, and tones out of thin air, arranging them into a flawless recreation of reality. And it does this silently, instantly, billions of times a day, all around the world. We live our lives through these luminous rectangles. They are our portals to work, to family, to news, to entertainment. We have become so accustomed to their magic that we don't even see it as magic anymore. It's just a screen. We swipe, we tap, we watch, and we accept. But have you ever stopped to wonder how that actually works? Forget the apps. Forget the software. How does the physical object itself, the screen, create that image? What is happening at a microscopic fundamental level to produce a single perfect pixel of that sunset orange? What are the first principles that allow a flat, solid object to generate light and color with such precision? Because when you look closely, the screen is perhaps the most profound and underappreciated piece of technology in our daily lives. It's the final frontier of the digital world, the place where abstract bits and bytes are translated into photons, the fundamental particles of light, and fired directly into our eyes. Today, we're putting that window under the microscope. We're opening the black box of the modern display. To appreciate the marvel of the modern screen, you first have to appreciate its ubiquity. Just take a moment and look around. How many screens are in your immediate vicinity right now? Your phone, certainly. Maybe a laptop or a desktop monitor, a television on the wall, a tablet on the coffee table, the display on your watch, your microwave, your car's dashboard, the thermostat on the wall. We are surrounded by glowing rectangles, and the quality of these displays has become so extraordinary that the technology itself has started to disappear. We talk about retina displays, a marketing term Apple coined that has become part of the lexicon. The idea is simple. The individual dots that make up the image, the pixels, are so small and so densely packed that at a normal viewing distance, the human eye can no longer distinguish them. The image resolves into a smooth, continuous whole. The screen ceases to look like a screen and starts to look like a printed photograph. This is the goal of all display technology, to erase itself, to become a perfectly transparent medium for the content it displays. And in many ways, it has succeeded. The images are brighter, the colors are more vibrant, the motion is smoother than ever before. We demand more and more from these windows. We want them to be thinner, lighter, more power efficient, and even flexible. We want to be able to read them in direct sunlight and watch movies on them in a pitch-black room. And the industry has, by and large, delivered. But this seamless experience hides an incredibly complex and beautiful story of physics and materials science. It's a story about controlling light in ways that would have seemed like pure science fiction just a few decades ago. To understand where we are, we have to understand where we came from. Before we could have a screen thin enough to slide into a pocket, we had to display images electronically using a device that was anything but flat. For the better part of the 20th century, The dominant technology was the cathode ray tube, or the CRT. If you're of a certain age, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The giant, heavy, boxy television set that sat in the corner of the living room, the bulky computer monitor that took up half the desk. The CRT was, in essence, a giant glass vacuum tube. At the back end of this tube was a device called an electron gun. This gun would fire a high-speed beam of electrons toward the front of the screen. The inside of the front glass was coated with materials called phosphors, which have a special property. They glow when they're struck by electrons. The electron gun didn't fire at the whole screen at once. It would scan across, painting the image one horizontal line at a time, from top to bottom, over and over again, typically 60 times every second. It happened so fast that your eyes and brain would blur the scanning motion into a stable, complete picture. This was a brilliant solution, but it came with massive drawbacks. Because the electron gun needed space to aim its beam across the entire area of the screen, the tube had to be very deep. The bigger the screen, the deeper the tube. This is why old TVs were so enormous and heavy. They were mostly empty space, a giant glass bottle containing a vacuum, and an electron gun. They were also fragile and consumed a tremendous amount of power. The holy grail for engineers was something else entirely. The dream wasn't just to improve the CRT, but to replace it. The goal was to create a flat panel display, a screen you could hang on the wall like a painting. This was the central problem, the high-stakes question that drove decades of research. How do you control and create an image on a thin, flat surface with microscopic precision without a giant electron gun sitting behind it? How do you make light appear on demand, at any point on a grid, millions of times over? Solving that puzzle would change the world, and the solution starts with understanding the smallest possible unit of a digital image, the pixel. We hear the word pixel all the time. It's short for picture element. We measure our cameras in megapixels, or millions of pixels. We describe our screen resolution by how many pixels wide and how many pixels tall it is. A 4K TV, for example, has a grid of roughly 3,840 pixels across and 2,160 pixels down. That's over 8 million pixels in total. Each one of those pixels is a tiny, controllable dot of light. But here is the first, crucial insight as we begin to open the box. The first principle that shatters the illusion of the screen. A pixel is not one thing. It's not a single dot that can change to any color it wants. A pixel is actually a tiny team of three. If you were to take an incredibly powerful magnifying glass to your screen, you would see that each pixel is composed of three smaller, distinct elements called subpixels. One of these subpixels can only ever produce the color red. Its neighbor can only ever produce green, and the third can only ever produce blue. Red, green, and blue. RGB. Those are the only three colors your screen can actually make. So where do the millions of other colors come from? The yellow of a lemon, the purple of a flower, the teal of the Caribbean Sea. They are all illusions. They are tricks of perception, created by a principle called additive color mixing. Your screen is like a master painter who only has 3 tubes of paint, but can create an infinite palette by mixing them. Except it's not mixing paint, it's mixing light. Think of each pixel as having 3 microscopic spotlights, one red, one green, and one blue. They are so close together that from a normal distance your eyes can't separate them. They just blend together. If the screen wants to show you the color white, it tells all 3 spotlights, red, green, and blue, to turn on to their maximum brightness. Your brain mixes that light together and perceives it as white. If the screen wants to show you black, it tells all 3 to turn off. The real magic happens with the colors in between. Want a bright sunny yellow. The screen turns the red and green subpixels all the way up and leaves the blue one completely off. Red light plus green light equals yellow light. Want magenta. Turn on red and blue, leave green off. Want a specific shade of brown. Maybe you turn red on at 70% brightness, green at 40%, and blue at 10%. By precisely controlling the individual brightness of just those three primary colors of light within each pixel, the screen can trick your brain into seeing virtually any color in the visible spectrum. This is our first principle, the bedrock on which everything else is built. Screens do not create millions of colors. They create exactly three. The rest of the magic isn't happening in the device, it's happening in your head. Now we have a new, more specific question. We know what a pixel is made of, but how does the screen control the brightness of millions upon millions of these tiny red, green, and blue subpixels, all at the same time, updating 60 times a second or more? For decades, the dominant answer to that question was a technology that is one of the most clever, counterintuitive, and elegant pieces of engineering you've likely never thought about. It's called the liquid crystal display, or LCD, and it's probably the screen you're looking at right now. The first and most important thing to understand about an LCD screen, and this is a huge and common misconception, is that the pixels themselves do not create any light whatsoever, not a single photon. This is a critical point. The pixels on an LCD screen are not tiny light bulbs. It's much more accurate to think of them as tiny, incredibly sophisticated window shutters. They don't create light, they control it. They block it or let it pass through. So, if the pixels don't make the light, where does it come from? It comes from something called a backlight. The best way to visualize a modern LCD screen is as a precisely engineered, multi-layered sandwich. So let's build one from back to front. The back slice of bread, the foundation of our sandwich, is the backlight. In most modern screens, this is a sheet of light-emitting diodes, or LEDs, that produce a bright, powerful, and uniform sheet of white light. This backlight is always on whenever your screen is on. It's a constant, unwavering glow. The entire job of every other layer in the sandwich is to tame that constant white light, to block it, shape it, and color it to form an image. So, sitting directly on top of our backlight, we place our first real layer of technology. It's a polarizing filter. This might sound complicated, but the concept is surprisingly simple. Light from a source like a backlight is unpolarized, which means its waves are vibrating in all directions, up and down, left and right, and every angle in between. You can think of it like a crowd of people wiggling a bunch of jump ropes in every possible direction. A polarizing filter acts like a vertical picket fence. It only allows the light waves that are wiggling vertically to pass through. All the other light waves, the horizontal ones, the diagonal ones, get blocked. So after passing through this first filter, our light is now neat and orderly. We have a sheet of vertically polarized light. Now, let's jump to the front of the sandwich, right behind the glass you touch. We're going to place a second polarizing filter here, but this one is oriented horizontally. It's a horizontal picket fence. So now we have a situation. We have a vertical polarizer at the back and a horizontal polarizer at the front. If you put them directly on top of each other, what happens? No light gets through. The vertically aligned light from the back filter is completely blocked by the horizontal front filter. It's like trying to slide a vertical credit card through a horizontal mail slot. It won't work. The screen would be completely black. This is where the magic ingredient comes in. This is the liquid crystal part of the liquid crystal display. Sandwiched between our two opposing polarizing filters is a thin layer of these truly bizarre molecules. Liquid crystals are a strange state of matter, somewhere between a liquid and a solid crystal. They can flow like a liquid, but their molecules can also be arranged in an ordered crystalline structure. And these particular liquid crystal molecules have two incredibly useful properties. First, in their natural resting state, they arrange themselves into a twisted helical structure, like a spiral staircase. Second, when you apply an electric voltage to them, they untwist and straighten out. Let's see how this works. We have our vertically polarized light coming from the backlight through the first filter. It enters the layer of liquid crystals. Since there's no voltage applied yet, the crystals are in their natural 90-degree twisted state. As the light passes through this twisted structure, the light wave itself gets twisted. The spiral staircase of crystals acts as a guide, rotating the light's polarization by exactly 90 degrees. So, the light that went in vertically comes out horizontally. And what's waiting for it at the front of the screen? Our horizontal polarizing filter. The light is now perfectly aligned to pass straight through. The result? Light from the backlight makes it all the way to your eye. The pixel is bright. Now, what happens when we want to make that pixel dark? We apply a voltage across the liquid crystal layer. This voltage causes the twisted molecules to instantly untwist and straighten out. They become like straight, uniform rods. Now, when the vertically polarized light from the back passes through this layer, nothing happens to it. The straight crystals don't rotate it. The light remains vertically polarized. It then arrives at the front horizontal filter and is completely blocked. The result? The pixel is dark. It's an astonishingly clever system. It's an electrical switch for light. But it's not just an on-off switch. By applying a very precise voltage, engineers can control exactly how much the crystals untwist. A small voltage might only untwist them part of the way, say 45 degrees. This would rotate the light partially, allowing some of it, but not all of it, to pass through the front filter. This is how an LCD screen creates shades of gray. It's a dimmer switch for every single pixel, controlled by an electrical signal. We've figured out how to make a pixel bright, dark, or any shade in between. But our backlight is white. We're still missing the most important part, color. This is the final layer of our sandwich. Right before the light reaches the front polarizing filter and the top layer of glass, it passes through a color filter. For each individual pixel, this filter is patterned with 3 microscopic windows. A tiny sliver of red-tinted glass, a tiny sliver of green, and a tiny sliver of blue. So, the full journey of light in a single LCD subpixel goes like this. A bright white light is generated by the backlight. It passes through a rear polarizer, becoming vertically polarized. It then enters a liquid crystal, which, depending on the voltage it's receiving, either twists the light 90 degrees or leaves it alone. The light then hits the front polarizer, which either lets it pass through or blocks it. Finally, if the light makes it through, it passes through a tiny colored window, red, green, or blue, on its way to your eye. The LCD isn't making red, green, or blue light. It's taking pure white light, and with incredible precision, filtering everything else out. It is a system of subtraction, a masterpiece of control, repeated millions of times over across the surface of your screen, all housed in a sandwich just a few millimeters thick. For decades, this intricate sandwich of light was the undisputed king of flat panel displays. It made laptops, flat-screen TVs, and modern smartphones possible. But in the world of technology, the king is never safe on the throne for long. A new challenger was emerging. One built on a completely different, and in many ways much simpler, first principle. If you've bought a high-end phone or television in the last several years, you've probably heard its name, OLED. OLED stands for Organic Light Emitting Diode, and understanding how it works reveals the unseen giant of display technology, the profound and fundamental difference between a technology that filters light and a technology that creates it. The OLED approach to making an image is revolutionary because of what it throws away. An OLED display gets rid of the entire sandwich. There is no backlight. There are no polarizing filters. There are no liquid crystals. In an OLED display, every single individual subpixel, every tiny red, every tiny green, and every tiny blue is its own microscopic light bulb. The organic in OLED refers to a class of carbon-based molecules. Scientists discovered that certain organic materials have a property called electroluminescence. This is a fancy word for a very simple idea. They glow when you run electricity through them. The beauty of it is that you can design different organic molecules to glow in different colors. So, an OLED display is simply a grid of millions of tiny dots made of these special materials. A red subpixel is made from a material that emits red light when a current is applied. A green subpixel is made from a material that emits green light. It's a fundamentally more direct approach. You want light somewhere. You just send electricity to that exact spot and create it on demand. And this seemingly simple difference in approach leads to the deep, transformative aha moment. It is the reason why technology reviewers and videophiles are so obsessed with the infinite contrast and perfect blacks of an OLED screen. Let's go back to our LCD for a moment. Think about how it displays the color black. The screen is trying to show you a dark night sky in a movie. It tells the liquid crystals for those pixels to untwist completely, to form a perfect barrier that will block the light from the backlight. But here's the problem. The backlight is always on. It's always blazing away behind the scenes, and the liquid crystal shutters are never perfect. It's like trying to make a room perfectly pitch black by closing the window blinds while the sun is shining brightly outside. You can do a pretty good job, but a little bit of light always leaks through. Look closely at an LCD screen in a dark room when it's supposed to be showing something black. You'll see it's not truly black. It's a glowing, milky, dark gray. The screen is visibly emitting light. This is what we call poor black levels, and it washes out the entire image, reducing its contrast, the difference between the brightest and darkest parts of the picture. Now consider the OLED. How does it display that same black night sky? The answer is breathtakingly simple. It just turns those pixels off. It completely cuts the power to the red, green, and blue subpixels in that area of the screen. There's no light to block because no light is being created in the first place. Off is truly off. Black is not a color the screen is trying to create. It is the screen's native state. It is the simple absence of light. This is the unseen giant. It's a paradigm shift. One technology, the LCD, is a masterpiece of subtraction. It starts with a flood of light and then works frantically to block and filter it with incredible precision. The other technology, the OLED, is a masterpiece of addition. It starts with a canvas of perfect darkness and creates light only exactly where and when it is needed. This fundamental difference is what gives OLED its infinite contrast. The brightest white a pixel can produce is right next to a pixel producing absolutely zero light, a perfect black. The effect is stunning. Colors pop. The image has a depth and realism that LCDs struggle to match. It also explains OLED's other advantages. With no need for a thick backlight layer, the screens can be impossibly thin and even flexible or transparent. They can also be more power efficient. On an LCD, displaying a black screen uses almost as much power as a white screen because the backlight is always on. On an OLED, displaying a black screen uses almost zero power because those pixels are simply off. So, let's step back and look at the journey we've taken. We started with the seamless, almost magical experience of looking at a perfect image on a thin piece of glass. It felt like a single, unified thing, a window into another world. But we decided to look closer, to reason from first principles, and the magic unraveled into a set of beautiful, understandable rules. We discovered that the millions of colors we see are just a clever illusion, a perceptual trick played on our brains by mixing just three primary colors of light: red, green, and blue. We learned that for decades, the screens that powered our world were not generating light, but meticulously controlling it. They were complex sandwiches of polarizing filters and twisting liquid crystals, working as microscopic shutters for a backlight that was always on. And then we saw a new way forward, a more direct principle, a technology that does away with the filters and the shutters, and instead turns every single pixel into its own tiny independent star, capable of shining brightly or disappearing into perfect darkness. The story of the modern screen, from the heavy cathode ray tube to the clever LCD to the brilliant OLED, is a story about gaining ever finer and more direct control over light itself. It's a powerful reminder of a core theme we explore on this show. Often, the greatest leaps in technology come not from adding more complexity, but from finding a simpler, more fundamental way to solve a problem. Instead of wrestling with a constant source of light, why not just create it where you need it? The next time you pull out your phone to look at a photo, take a moment. See the image not as a whole, but as a mosaic, a grid of millions of tiny glowing dots, or millions of tiny crystal gates, all working in perfect silent concert to build your reality, one pixel at a time. The image you see is not a single thing at all. It is a temporary consensus, a fleeting and beautiful agreement between millions of points of light.
You've been listening to First Principles. Until next time, stay curious.